Hello, my loves. For some reason, I'm gonna be honest at this point, I don't really remember why I decided to do this, but I decided to only read classics for a month. I decided this months ago that I was gonna do this in September. I think because September's my birthday month, so I was like, perfect time to do that. But I still don't really know why I decided to do that in the first place, but I did, and today I'm going to share with you the books that I did read in this month. When I set out to do this, I was expecting by the end of the month to never want to read another classic again, but you know what? I actually enjoyed this more than I thought I would. Yeah, I am looking forward to being able to read something that was written within like maybe the past 5 years, more contemporary, you know? I am looking forward to that, but I haven't been put off entirely. There is still, there are classics that I purposefully did not read in this time because I knew they would take me a really long time to read, and I wanted to try and read as varied a selection. I mean, it's not a very varied selection, but I wanted to try and, focus on more than just one book, but I still want to read them. Like, I haven't been put off, essentially. I thought I would be bored and never want to read anything written in the 19th century again. And admittedly, not all of these were written in the 19th century, but all in all, I actually quite enjoyed myself. So let's talk about what I did read. I'm gonna start with the contemporary classics because the first book that I did actually read in the month of September, which I still haven't got the really bad sticker residue of, was 1984 by George Orwell. I honestly not really read many modern classics. The only ones I have read are the ones that I had to read at school, and I don't remember anything that happens in any of them. So this was like my first modern classic since like getting back into reading over the past year and a bit. I rated this 3 stars. I wasn't disappointed because I don't think I really had like super high expectations for it. My problem with this book was I really enjoyed the political theme. I found it very interesting and very thought-provoking, but the actual story itself I didn't really care about. I didn't really connect to or care about, I suppose you could say, either of the like 2 big characters. The main guy, Winston, I just didn't feel that he had much personality at all. And I know that you could say that's the point. People don't have personality because, it's all, everything is monitored and controlled by the state, and everyone has to just follow what they're being told, and they can't show even slight differences because then bad things might happen. I get that, but we see inside his thoughts and his inner world, and yeah, we get some of that, but I still just didn't really care about him. Honestly, I did not care about him at all. I also didn't care about Julia. The thing that annoyed me most about Julia is I think that she could have been a really interesting character, but we're seeing her from Winston's point of view, which just makes her boring because I feel like he did not give her enough credit for being as interesting as she was. I think that was my main problem with it. I was just a little bit bored at times and didn't really care that much. Don't get me wrong, there were some parts of this book that like horrified me. I was just like, oh my god, that would be horrific. That would be a horrible thing to experience. But yeah, I don't know. I think this just wasn't for me, unfortunately, because I thought it would be for me. It's why I picked this one as the first modern classic that I've read. But I liked the politics of it. I did. Apart from that one chapter where it was just him reading that book, and that meant we just had to read the whole book. That was incredibly boring. I don't think many people liked that chapter, but anyway, the actual politics of it, super interesting. I would have liked to have experienced and spent more time with that a little bit more, maybe from different people's point of view and perspectives, or I don't know. I appreciated that look at it. It was just the actual story itself, the characters it focused on, I did not care about, if that makes sense. I still would recommend it. I don't think it was awful. It just, I suppose, maybe wasn't 100% my thing, you know. And the other modern classic was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I have wanted to read this book for such a long time, and I'm going to be completely honest, it wasn't until very recently that I realised it's set in the 60s. Was it written in the 60s? I can't remember, but about young woman in the 60s, sort of trying to make her way in life and having always done very well academically and wanting to be a writer and struggling with mental health. I don't know what I thought it was about, or if I thought it was older than that, but I didn't realize it was the 60s. Fine with me, because I love the 60s. I don't really remember much or anything of what happens in it, nor do I particularly remember how I felt when I read it. Apparently, I rated it 4 stars, so clearly I enjoyed it. My issue with it is when I look back, I thought this was going to be a book that really, really, like, stayed with me and left a big impact on me. And it just didn't. I haven't thought about it since. I can't really remember much of what happened in it. I can't really bring up any emotion around it, which doesn't mean it was bad. It's almost like a bit disappointing, because I was expecting, based on what, you know, a lot of other people say about this book and the kind of things I typically enjoy, I thought this was going to be like a favourite, that it was going to leave a deep mark on me, and it just really didn't, which was really disappointing. Doesn't negate the fact that it was good and I enjoyed it. Even though it's set in the 60s, I think there's still a lot of elements there of being a woman that was very relatable, which I think you can argue is the case for any book that goes into stuff like that. Regardless of when it's written, you can always find parts to relate to. That specifically for me anyway, the whole really enjoying and thriving on doing well in academics, and then suddenly getting to a certain stage in life where you kind of can't just coast by with little effort, and you have to actually start putting that effort in, and academics don't translate into the real world, and suddenly you don't know what to do. Yeah, that bit very relatable. I did also think very good, understandably so, given, you know, Sylvia Plath's own experiences. Very relatable and good depiction of depression, definitely. Very interesting to see the inpatient mental health treatment at the time. It led me down a rabbit hole into researching insulin shock treatment, despite the fact that I did a psychology degree, which included looking at old treatments for various mental health conditions, but had never heard of before. So yeah, I spent a while looking into that, and I plan to look into it more because I was just like very intrigued and confused by it. But anyway, it was good, and again, I would recommend this book. It just didn't leave the mark on me that I was expecting it to, which I feel vaguely disappointed by, but it doesn't mean it was a bad book. 2 really short little classics. These are both from the Penguin Little Black Classics collection. First one is White Nights by Dostoevsky. This was so good. This is, I think, like 80, 90 pages, but God, you go on a journey in this. This is 5 stars. I rated it 4.5, and then I've thought about it more since, and I've realised this was 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this. I've seen very mixed opinions on this story, which surprises me a little bit, some of the criticisms I've seen of it. Because a lot of them were criticisms of the character in this book, who was basically like very insular and in his own world, in his own head and daydreams, and I suppose maybe not like the most social, and his kind of relationship that then forms between this woman that he randomly meets one night. I just didn't see a lot of the criticisms that people were saying about the character himself. There was some really nice quotes in there. There were some really funny parts. I don't know if they were intended to be funny, but there was like, there's this bit where like him and the woman first meet, and he's like trying to tell her the story of his life, and he is just babbling and not really making a lot of sense and just going on these tangents that is making the story much longer than it needs to be. And her response was something like, yeah, you're telling it wonderfully, but can you tell it less wonderfully? As in, like, can you get to the point? And there was just bits like that I found quite funny. The end is not supposed to be funny. I found it funny in like I can't believe that's what's happened way. I really liked the ending. I really, really liked the ending. It is not a happy ending. But I really enjoyed the ending. Just all in all, I really, really enjoyed this. Even though, you know, I read it within a day, I spent quite a short time with it. It stayed with me, and I enjoyed every moment of reading it. It didn't feel like there was anything missing from it, or like, oh, that would have been better if it was longer. It felt complete and like perfect on its own. So I would really, really recommend this. Also, if you're like thinking about getting into classics in general and you haven't really read any or many for a long time, or Dostoevsky but you're intimidated because his books are long as fuck, read this first. This is really easy to read, it's really short, good introduction. Read this first. And then the other little black classic is also Dostoevsky, and this is the Meek one. This is a lot shorter. This is like 50 something pages, I think, and this is basically about a man who drives his wife to suicide. I did enjoy this. I did not enjoy this as much as White Nights. This was 4 stars, which I think is fair. This is one that I do wish was longer. I think it would have been so interesting to explore that relationship dynamic and the emotional impact it left on the main man. I don't remember what his name was. I think that would have been incredibly interesting to explore in a longer novel, and I think Dostoevsky would have done it very well. It was still good for how short it was, even like though it would have been interesting and enjoyable to read that like more fleshed out. The thing that I both love and hate most about this book is that the man, the husband, I both hate him and feel really sorry for him at the same time. And I think that is a show of good writing if I can feel sorry for this man, even though you can argue it was his fault that his wife did that. What I did enjoy most about this book, and what I feel like is the bit of writing that made me feel sorry for the character even though he was awful, was that for a like 50 something page book, it captured a feeling of grief and regret incredibly well, even though that bit probably would have only been like maybe 5 pages, 5-10 pages, maybe more, I don't know, but like it captured that emotion incredibly well, which I really, really enjoyed. Would definitely recommend, just didn't quite enjoy it as much as the other one. These next two don't fit into a category, they're just other classics that I read. So the first one is The Trial by Kafka. I actually started reading this book maybe a month or 2 ago, and for whatever reason just didn't, I don't know why I didn't finish it. I think I only read like maybe the first chapter, and then I think I got distracted by other things. Oh no, I didn't finish it because of the formatting, and I thought I'd just got a bad Kindle edition, so I bought a physical copy of it and realized that is just how it's laid out, and I was like, okay, I just need to get used to this then. The paragraphs are so long, no new line for speech, so you can work out who's talking. It wasn't confusing at any point to work out who was talking, even though it's all in the same paragraph on the same line, but it does take a bit of getting used to. I did enjoy this though. I rated this 4 stars as well. Obviously you have to accept with this and a lot of his other works is that these are not finished. Like the story is complete, you're not left on like a just randomly without the story being finished or there being a satisfying conclusion. It's finished in that sense, but as in it's not finished in the it's not polished or edited or, you know, fleshed out in the way that other novels would be, because my mate Kafka had crippling perfectionism issues and didn't finish things properly or burnt them. You kind of have to accept that with this, but it is still really enjoyable. It is about a man called, is his name K? It is about a dude called Joseph K, who we just referred to as K, who is accused of a crime. We never find out what the crime is, and we basically just follow him trying to deal with this. And the trial, there's not really much of a trial in it, I'll be honest. It's a lot more just bureaucracy and systems being stupidly set up and confusing and frustrating, which is what I enjoyed about it, because that is realistic. This is strange though. There was a lot in this that just didn't make sense, and I wasn't really sure if that was because it wasn't finished properly or if it was just Kafka being Kafka and things being quite surreal. I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing though. I don't think it made the story bad or confusing. Yes, there were times where I was like, what are you talking about? As if something's happened that you haven't told us. But I think that just added to the general feeling of the story, which is that the main character has no idea what's going on. He has no idea why he's been arrested, or the stupid way that all of these systems work in terms of him trying to get a fair trial and all of that. He's confused. We're also confused because we don't know what's going on or why he's making all of these seemingly stupid and unhelpful decisions in terms of how to manage his trial. So I thought that kind of works quite well. Whether it's deliberate or not, who knows. I do understand why some people might not enjoy this book. I do. I think it is a little convoluted at times, and yeah, things just don't make sense. The formatting. There are a lot of reasons why I understand why people might not like this. Also, the main character, Kay, is kind of infuriating, but I didn't like hate him or anything. It didn't take away my enjoyment of the story, the fact that he was infuriating and making really stupid decisions. I understand why people might not like this or find it quite frustrating to read. I do, but I did enjoy it, and I thought it was frustrating in a good way. I feel like that was really incoherent and rambly, but it was good. I would recommend. However, I understand that a lot of people might not enjoy it. If you've been here for a while, if you've watched any video where I've mentioned Charles Dickens before, you will know that I have a very complicated relationship with him. Generally, I had been of the opinion for many a year that I did not like him or his writing. And in recent months, I've realised maybe I just was not ready to read classics when I read Oliver Twist, which was the only, like, full-length novel of his I'd read. I also read A Christmas Carol and quite enjoyed it. But anyway, I decided it was time in the month of classics to give him another go, to give a full-length novel of his another go. And so I decided to read Great Expectations, mainly because we all know the character of Miss Havisham, and I was intrigued by Miss Havisham, so I wanted to read this. And I take back everything that I said about Charles Dickens. I loved this book. This is a 5-star book. I can't believe it. If me of a year ago knew I was rating a Charles Dickens book 5 stars, she would be shocked. But you know what? This book left me shocked so many times. We follow Pip, which, can I just say, opening your novel with the fact that your main character's full name is Philip Pirrip was just hilarious to me. What a stupid name. I love that choice. It's so funny. Anyway, we follow Pip, an orphan with quite poor beginnings, who is looked after by his sister, who's not very nice, and her husband Joe, who is very nice. And the expectation is he'll go on to be a blacksmith, but then this mysterious circumstance that comes along which elevates Pip in society, and he goes off to London and various things happen. I found this easier to read than I expected. I thought I hated Charles Dickens' writing style, and I understand that a lot of people do, and I can understand why a lot of people do, because it is quite wordy and lengthy, and his sentences are at times unnecessarily long. He was also incredibly descriptive of certain things, but I admittedly sometimes got a little bit bored or kind of skipped over descriptions of certain settings because they weren't important. But for the most part, one of the things I have always enjoyed about his writing, even when I thought I didn't like him, was his descriptions of places, because I think it is incredibly atmospheric and you do really feel like you're there. I think the main thing I appreciated about this book was just how well all these different plot points that had been brought up were, like, woven together and came together. And like, yeah, there was so many times when I was so shocked. I don't know if I'm just stupid. Like, sometimes foreshadowing is incredibly obvious to me. Sometimes the way plots are gonna go is incredibly obvious to me, and I'm not often actually that shocked by things that happen in books, because, like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the time you can kind of work out where it's going. I was gasping, like, having to sit there and just take a moment, I think like 3 or 4 times in this book. I did not see any of that coming, of the, like, little reveals and explanations for things. Again, maybe I'm just stupid, but I didn't, and I really, really enjoyed that. Characters were good. Yeah, Pip can be insufferable at times, but there's explanations in the circumstances for it, and you get to go on that growth and discovery with him. Miss Havisham, fucking legend. Love her. Amazing. Very glad I picked it for her, and that she was so prevalent in the book. Estella, wonderful. The lawyer guys, Jagger's arsehole, Wemmick, wonderful. Just, there was a lot of really good characters in this, a lot of very different types of relationships as well. Yeah, I genuinely don't have anything bad to say about this book. I do get why people might not enjoy his works or his writing style. I get it. So if you know you don't like that, don't read it. But if you have been put off this because of GCSE English, then maybe give it another go, because I really enjoyed it. Okay, the only other book which is actually a DNF, unfortunately, was The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. Is that who it's by? I can't quite remember. I listened to this as an audiobook because I thought, you know, we're coming into October. Sleepy Hollow would be a really good thing to read, because I haven't watched the film for a very, very long time, but I did really enjoy the film. And I was like, oh, read the original. I'm sure it'll be great. It was so boring. And I DNF'd this. I think I was like 79% of the way through the audiobook. I had maybe like 20 minutes left of it. And I just did not care. I really did not care. It's not a long book, whether you read it physically or via audiobook. It's really not long. It was not what I was expecting. The Headless Horseman, and this might just be my fault for like basing it off the film, but the Headless Horseman hadn't even really made an appearance, and I was 80% of the way through the book. And like, so far all the legend had been was Ichabod trying to woo Katrina, and I did not care at all. Ichabod is not presented in a way that makes me care about whether he gets this girl or not. In fact, I quite disliked him and found him quite irritating. The audiobook version that I listened to as well was not the best. Like, you could hear so much editing in it where just like the person's voice just suddenly changed because they clearly then cut to a recording at a different time. This was just, maybe my expectations were just too great, but I was so bored and disappointed. I was expecting it to be like, you know, spooky Headless Horseman, and it was just some twat trying to get with a girl. Maybe the last 80% was all the horsemen, and I should finish it. I don't think this is a DNF for good. I think I'll come back to this one day. I'll probably actually physically read it instead of the audiobook, because honestly I had to restart the audiobook about 3 times because my attention was just going because I didn't care. So I probably will read this at some point because I know it's short, but for this month I've left it. I'll come back to it at some point, but not right now, because it just did not capture my attention, which was disappointing because I thought that would be a nice little spookier read. But yeah, that is everything I've read this month, all of the classics. And yeah, generally I've had a really good time. Generally I've really enjoyed myself, and even though there were some that maybe I didn't enjoy as much as others, or some that I was very bored by, it still has been, I think, a positive reading month. Just had a good time. I probably will have a little bit of a break from classics. I have plenty more that I want to read though, so I probably won't have that much of a break, honestly, but I'm looking forward to reading some contemporary fiction, probably some spooky fiction. If you have recommendations for like, especially like cozier spooky books that you plan on reading in like around Halloween and stuff like that, let me know, because I have a few on my mind, but I always appreciate recommendations. That is all I have for you today, so I hope wherever you are, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.